the order of the Finance Administration Committee. Roll call, please.
Alderman Ames.
Here.
Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Curielli.
Here.
Alderman Jacob.
Here.
Alderman Messina.
Here.
Alderman Sorrentino.
Here.
Alderman Sismarski.
Here.
Alderman Woods.
Here. And before we approve the minutes, the mayor has some words.
Yeah, I just, former CDC chairman suddenly passed away. Just wanted to take a moment of silence for Mr. Brad Carriage.
Past resident.
Thank you, and our thoughts and prayers go out to Brad's family.
Okay, I need approval of the minutes of February 10th, 2022 for the Finance Administration Committee meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any corrections to the minutes? If there are none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes passed. Okay, report and recommendation. Fiscal year ending, budget 2023. Director Brad Wilson,
Didn't Art make a
you want
motion?
to do the introductions?
Art, you made a motion, right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, before us tonight is the draft proposed fiscal 23 budget. As we've done in years past, we'll go through the slide deck that was sent out last Friday. Each slide, after the first few, correlate to one of the tabs in the budget book. You know, as we've done in years past, we try to go through this as much in order as we can. But if we have to go back to something, obviously we will, but we try to move through it as consecutively as we can. So moving forward, again, a lot of this is the same, just recap stuff from years past. We have the different fund types. The general fund, that's the main operating fund for the city. That's where Public Works, Finance, Administration, CD, Police Department, you know, the core operations of the city. Special revenue funds, that's going to be your road and bridge, motor fuel tax, tourism, things like that, where those monies can only be used for specific tasks and purposes, or if you will, special things. That's the special revenue designation. Capital projects, that one speaks for itself. We had the CIP meeting last month, so we're all familiar with the capital projects. Enterprise, that's going to be your sanitation, commuter parking lot, water and sewer fund. Internal service fund, that's the SURF, the vehicle replacement fund. And then the fiduciary, that's the police pension fund and the SSA funds. Those are monies that we have to account for and track, but aren't technically or legally the city's money. Obviously, the police pension fund money is the pension funds, and the SSA money, that money is due to bondholders, but we still have to account for it on the city's books. We have 15 funds, active funds. 5 have a proposed budget increase, 10 have a proposed decrease. This is similar in years past. Note the water and sewer fund is cash flow positive, just negative based upon depreciation. You know, the main operating funds, the general fund has a surplus, so structurally that's good. Some of the special revenue funds have decreases, but that's by design. Over time, some of the money builds up, and then you spend it down. So there's nothing alarming at all in those 10 decreases. So just want to make sure that it's, you know, everything was planned and laid out accordingly. Capital spending, again, we went through the CIP a month ago, so we kind of know where we're at with that. We're still being aggressive while also being smart with how we're doing the projects. Again, the process. Now, like I said, each department or each fund has its own slide in the deck and its own tab in the budget book. You will see a few green sheets this year. They're the expanded level sheets. You may recall, I believe there were none last year. And in the past, there occasionally been a red sheet. So green means go, red means stop or no. And those are just the manager's recommendations on it. Obviously, the council has the final say. We'll try to gain a consensus on each section, you know, on each slide, each tab before moving on. But like I said, if we have to go back, certainly we will. But we'll try to, like I said, try to get consensus before we move along. Begin with overview of the entire budget, the next few slides, then the general fund, and all the departments, divisions within the general fund, the special revenue funds, so on and so forth. February 24th, that is tonight. Get through as much as possible. And if needed, come back on the 10th. I believe last few years we've been able to get through it in one night, so we're, optimistic. But we do have that as a backup. All right, so going through high level, this excludes transfers. You can see the prior 3 years for revenues. So trending along pretty close. Expenditures, the one kind of the outlier there is 23 up to 56 million. 13 of that, a little over 13 of that is the Public Works campus. So if you take that out, you're back around 43 million, which is pretty much right in line with where we've been the past few years, and also right in line with overall revenue spend as well. Some housekeeping things to remember as we're going through on the slides and the explanations. Union contracts, non-union salary policy, FICA, IMRF, all that's included. There's really nothing we can do about any of that. One note this year, the IMRF rate went down over 2.5% due to good returns. So it was over 11 last year. This year it's in the 8s. We'll see what happens next year, and then when the ERI comes online, it will go up a little bit. But we're hopeful that with some good returns and whatnot, that it'll stay lower. And like I said, we'll give a reason if there's a significant change in something. But I mean, to be fair, if somebody's office supply budget changed by $5, I'm not really going to call that out. Obviously, if you have a question on the $5, feel free, but it's really pretty immaterial overall. So that's why we don't go into those things. And then ask questions as we go through. So the expanded level summary, the 4 items, and again, these are in the respective departments, so we'll get to them. This is just kind of giving you a heads up of what they are. There's an IT technician in the administration department, administrative sergeant and property maintenance employee in the police department, and entryway sign landscaping in the streets department. And those are all in the general fund. So the general fund, administration, you may remember last year we got rid of central services and switched things around a little bit. So that consolidation continues. So the administration has those 6 divisions within it. Community development has the 2. Finance, police, Board of Fire and Police, and then Public Works has the 3 divisions in it in the general fund. Again, utilities, storm, sewer, that's in the water fund, that's why they're not shown up here. So, general fund summary, you can see the top line shows there that we're on track to end with a surplus of over $799,000, just under $800,000. So that looks like a pretty good year overall for the general fund. And then you can see the kind of the grid showing the changes. A lot of the savings is on the expense side. As you can see, about $678,000 lower in projected expenses than we thought we were going to be. The next line down, the budget as presented, showing a surplus of just over $1.1 million. I don't want everybody to get super excited. $925,000 of that is the ARPA money from the bill that was passed last year. So if you remove the ARPA funding, that puts the surplus at about $180,000 for next fiscal year.
The ARPA funding is the American Recovery Act?
Yes,
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure.
go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So like I said, just without the ARPA money, if you strip that out, the surplus is just over $180,000. So even without that, as we've done in past years with the rent from the 790 building, kind of budgeting around that, we do have a revenue policy that states we're not to include one-time revenues into core operations, because that just sets you up for failure in future years. So we are abiding by that going forward this year as well.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yeah, some of the aldermen up there, I'm trying to remember what page, tell us what page you're on if you. Summary, we don't have it.
Number 6, page 6 in the binder.
Oh, we're all in the general fund summary. All right, thanks.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you. So now we're on to the summary of revenues in the general fund, which this, if we're looking at a page, is actually going to be page 36.
The summary, this page is in here?
It's not. It's
Not.
six is not the right page. It's,
Yeah.
summary is not in the binder.
Okay,
Oh, it
not
is.
the-
Go
the-
to, the divider's on the wrong spot.
This is the slide, the presentation slide, right?
Correct, yeah. and the
Yes.
resolution-
It's right here.
Now you tell me.
So we're not there yet. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if you want to see the detail of this particular slide that's up there, that's going to be in the general fund summary tab, beginning on page 36. It'll be page 36 and page 37 is the detail of this particular slide. Again, and not to beat a dead horse here, but you'll see the 20,000% increase in intergovernmental. Again, 925,000 of that is the ARPA money. So strip that out and it's a lot more of a reasonable increase. The reduction in charges for services is largely based upon the rent from 790 that we had known was going to go away. And with Solid moving out and us taking over the building, that indeed did go away. Some notes on here, increase in taxes, property tax going up, income tax per the IML guidance is going up a little bit, and use tax. License and permits, there's an increase in the right-of-way fees. We have a policy for fiber optic installation that we are going to be collecting on some vendors. Again, the ARPA funding, the rent is the fourth bullet down. And the last bullet is an increase in transfers. There's the creation of the administration transfer from the CIP, and then, which is similar to what we do with tourism, water,
Mayor?
Metra, et cetera.
Brad, the right-of-way fees increase, so you have that one as 350,000, if I'm looking at page 36, right? Right? From this year, right now, we're gonna come in at 53,000. So are you telling me we already have all these contracts lining up to come in? Is that why we're up to 350? It's done already? We know about it? Or, I know if they put in for permits and things like that?
Go ahead, Director.
Yes, yeah, they've put in for permits, and they've been made aware of the fees. And so it's a pretty binary situation. There's the policy and the fees, and if they don't, then it could be a problem.
Alderman Messina?
So just to piggyback off the mayor's, because I had a question on this one as well that I was going to ask. Is this, when you say fiber optic installations around, tied it all to the infrastructure bill from Biden, and that it's the fiber optics and broadband and all that, or like what does this fiber optics installation mean?
Go ahead, Director.
Sure, so it's largely, if not completely, based in the industrial park.
Okay.
So there's one company that a few years ago just literally ran a spine of fiber through town as part of a loop, a greater national, and the one company actually goes across the pond with their loop. Then there's other smaller players that are looking to just monetize some services that they have. So they're putting in fiber optic lines in our right-of-way to then sell it to the businesses within the industrial park. So.
Does that, follow up?
Go ahead.
Does that conflict with the agreement we have with Comcast? The money we get annually from them as revenue?
Go ahead.
Sure, so as part of the franchise agreement, they're required to remit a certain percentage of all their revenues that they make off of anything that's in our right-of-way. And it's our understanding that we should be collecting those monies. We're confirming that with them currently. In the past, it had always been, well, that's just off of cable, but now with the increase in fiber,
Yeah.
we're just confirming that information with them. Actually, just sent an email to our governmental rep earlier this evening, making sure that we're above board with all of that stuff.
Okay, just to your point, I want to make sure we're above on that. It seemed like they conflicted with the franchise agreement we had with Comcast, so that clarifies a lot. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director.
I believe that's it on the revenue notes, unless there's any other questions. We'll do a summary of expenses. Summary of expenses and personnel. A decent percentage of that increase are the 3 expanded level items. Contractual is driven by the AC/DC contract, the dispatching contract, as well as increase in the property casualty workers' comp insurance. And then there is also an increase in IT software and licensing fees as well. And then the other, that's the police pension contribution. You remember last year it went up quite significantly. We did a smoothing methodology, and so this is the second year of that. Absent that smoothing, that number would have been about 50,000 higher. So we're thankful to the actuaries that we were able to smooth it out for a couple of years. Other than that, everything else is pretty unremarkable, generally speaking.
Right, so when we go through the budget, could you refer it to the page number so we can follow through, because we'll go through the pack, the binder, so this way, Did you have a question, Alderman
You may
Messina?
have answered, are you going to dive deeper into the commodity section? Was it the commodities line item, no, excuse me, the contractual services line item that went up? Was that tied to, did you say licensing, like renewal licensing, software renewal licensing?
Correct, that is one of the line items that increased that. Yeah, and
Is
that's
this
in
the right
the,
time do we
that's,
want-
that's in the administration department budget, so
Yeah,
we get to
we'll talk
administration.
about it later, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Mhm. All right, the administration department budget. So, this will be the city administration tab.
Alderman Jacob, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Brad, I had a couple quick questions on the revenues for the general.
Okay.
On the Trax Guard, I see we're proposing 550,000, but I noticed it's been 350,000 and 373. I mean, I know we were down for a while because they were doing stuff with that system. Is that why the huge increase? Because we haven't hit a number over 500,000 in like 3 years.
Yeah, I believe that was part of it, and I think even earlier this year, there was a hiccup with the system. So I think once we were looking at the good months, that we knew there was solid data in, and even looking at the last couple months, as people are starting to drive more and move around more, we've been having some pretty solid months. So yeah, I would say between COVID and then, like I said, we did have a little bit of a hiccup earlier in the year. That's reflective in that 350, and that's why that number is probably a little bit artificially low because of those couple of months that we had an issue with them, so.
Okay.
And the chief did work with them, so we didn't pay for those months, that they wasn't really operating properly.
Okay, go ahead.
One other question. It's not a lot of money, but on court supervision, I mean, we've collected like $256, $1,250, but we keep budgeting $9,500. Is there a reason we budget so high when we've never even come close to that number?
Yeah, the court supervision is an interesting one. Chief, if you want to maybe talk about what that is, that might shed a little light on that.
So a couple things with that. If citations go to court and people end up pleading guilty and they want to get court supervision, they have to pay an additional fee. Those fees are then designated as they have to be used towards the purchase of squad cars or other certain things. Obviously, once COVID hit, traffic and citations went through the floor. So really, prior to COVID though, in fiscal years before that, we were averaging in we even had some years over 10,000. So most recently we haven't, but with the return to a little bit more normalcy, there's a good chance that if people choose to get court supervision, those fees will come back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Like I said, so we're in the administration division now, which the tab is city administration. Page number of the org chart is on 39. So here in city administration, again, personnel is up. It was the relocation of an employee from CD into administration. And then there's also the inclusion of the IT technician, which is the one green sheet in administration. So that's the predominant driver in the increase in salaries, or personnel, excuse me. And the contractual, the drivers there, a little bit, like I said, of the property casualty. Legal did increase a little bit, and then some of those costs associated with IT are kind of the main drivers there. So I know, Alderman Messini, you said you had a potential question, or do you want to do the expanded level item first?
We have to make a motion in order to accept the expanded item in the budget?
Well, I mean, I think if there's concurrence, I
Okay.
think we can just move on.
Right. So any
So, but I
objection to it? The expanded item? Want to,
I'll second whatever the motion is.
No motion yet.
no
No
motion?
motion yet?
But it'll come to council.
Hold that second.
Yeah, so if we move forward to the expanded level item, so here's the slide on the expanded level item. Again, if you're following along, in the hard copy, it's page 41. There is a little bit more verbiage on page 41 that I could get on the slide and make it readable. So at this point, we would entertain any questions, comments, thoughts on this particular expanded level item.
Nick's not here to answer any anyhow, right? So,
He is not.
yeah, move forward.
Can move forward then. Go ahead. Oh, you got a question? Alderman Jacob? Go ahead.
Yeah, on page 42, on the personnel, I know you said the IMRF expense went down a little bit, but we've increased almost, the salaries are almost 20% higher, and the IMRF is going down. I know you said it went down a little bit, but with such a big increase, it's gonna go down that much, the IMRF expense? Like it's going down from 89 to 82, but we're increasing the salaries by $130,000.
Yeah, because it went from over 11% to below 9, so it went down by, what, 20%? Probably, so, yeah, I mean, it's a formula in Excel, so a pretty high level of confidence in that. I mean, and if you look through the IMRF expenses, pretty much throughout the entire budget book, they're down, so. It did catch me off guard a little bit, you're correct, but yeah, it's went down over 2.5%, so.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Alderman Sorrentino.
Thank you. You know, I'm looking at this page 42, item, or count number 40110, elected officials, is that us? Is that the council?
Yes,
Okay.
well, and the mayor and the clerk and the treasurer.
It is?
And a liquor commission.
Yeah,
Did we get a raise that I'm not unaware of?
You didn't know?
No.
Cumulative.
We didn't get-
Everybody.
That's everybody, that's cumulative.
Really?
Yeah, it's all 11 elected officials aggregated together
Oh, okay.
in that
Peter's
line. item.
donating his salary this year.
So we're not part of the 20% that Peter brought up, are we?
That's RMF.
That's a good point.
Go ahead, Director.
That's in there too.
No, could you address that point for the people watching
Yeah.
at home? That is, all kidding aside, a good point. Our cumulative salary was not impacted by any type of increase that will, in the future, become some fake commercial.
Go ahead, Director.
Sure, yeah. The elected official salaries are set by ordinance, and so the only way for those to change would be to change the ordinance. And I haven't seen that come forward in a while.
No, we're good.
So, yeah, and there's also rules then about, sitting members and when it takes effect, so you can't change the salary for yourself a week ahead of time. I think it's 180 days before. There's a bunch of other rules and regulations to go around it to prevent any, quote-unquote shenanigans with elected official salaries.
Go ahead, Alderman Sorrentino.
Just for my own edification, When is the last time this council did see an increase in their, can I call it a salary? What, was that in the 1900s? Could you answer that?
I would have to go back and look.
That long ago, huh?
I don't know that.
That
it's-
long ago.
The council has changed since I've been here.
14 years? More than 14 years ago, when Moby Dick was a minnow.
Go ahead, Director, did you have anything to say?
So I just want the viewing public to realize that we're not up here for the money, obviously. We're here for the benefit of our residents. However, they got this cost of what? Maybe it should be considered down the road. Just saying, McDonald's pays more. All right, thank you. So over 14 years, that's good.
Director Wilson, go ahead.
No, say we had done a survey a few years ago, and the decision was made at that time not to change them. You know, if, we could certainly revisit that if there was a consensus to do that. But like, so we looked at it probably 5 or 6 years ago, and at that time, there was, the consensus at that point was not to dig deeper into that.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sure. So, again, here's a breakdown of administration. This was the overall administration aggregated. So if you go through and look at each of the divisions within, again, the city manager, again, the increase is the personnel, the relocated position, and the IT technician. Legal, really just more based on utilization. HR, HCM, that's the property casualty workers' comp increase. And then IT, that's the licensing agreements and licensing and maintenance agreements, predominantly driving that particular.
Do we now have a chief marketing officer making 1.3 million? What's the CMO?
City manager's office.
Okay. I'm kidding, but okay. City manager's office is what it was, okay.
Alderman Jacob?
Do you know?
On the, under IT, so under IT professional services, I know you said licenses, but it says IT professional services. Since we're now adding an additional IT person, that's going up from 18,000 to 80,000? What kind of professional services do we need?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Page 44.
Page 44. Yeah, the
So under
bottom.
IT professional services, we went from 17,900 to 80,000, but we're hiring an additional person. So I'm curious, what kind of services are we hiring out for an additional 60,000?
Sure, so I'll give my best answer based upon what I've heard Nick say whenever we've asked him that question. Is that those are going to be those services that are highly specialized and technical, you know, perhaps dealing with servers or more advanced things with the firewall, or yeah, just more advanced items that we wouldn't have the in-house expertise to deal with.
Okay, well, I guess I'm all for, I've been for another person in IT, but it's still, if we're getting an additional person and we're going to spend an additional 60,000 in services, that,
Again,
Well,
he's
those
not
are
here, so
licensed.
we're supposed to ask the questions before, so. No offense, I'm just saying, like, that's something I saw that I just tabled. I don't get it, that's another
Well,
topic for
could-
another day.
Go
could you
ahead, Director.
maybe ask him and maybe just give us a report?
Go ahead, you got a follow-up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we could maybe
Yeah.
let him send us an email about that and explain that to us?
Okay.
I think we can work with Jeff and get that accomplished, sure.
Thank you.
Director Wilson, go ahead.
And I think, I mean, unless, I know Alderman Messina, you maybe had a question on the maintenance of the licensing, but I guess, you know, there might be a more technical Nick question, the licensing fees, but
Yeah, I mean, could you put that in your list of questions? I mean, was that just a standard renewal? Did we add licensing? Did we add, I know at the body cams, right, storage? Again, I knew he wasn't gonna be here, so I didn't It's my fault. I saw the manager's report on Sunday, so I'll catch up with him later, or if he's gonna respond, if he can put it in, great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it just, he did leave a couple of quick cliff notes. I mean, there's the full realization of the ERP annual renewals in there. There is a new backup provider that's in there. There's the new cost for Office 365, that new subscription model that's in there. And there's one other newer subscription model that was part of the COVID funding. It had to do with the firewall. I'm not sure what specifically. So there was the Office 365, the backups, ERP, and something with a firewall. And those were all.
Mayor, Mayor, you had a question?
Yeah, so we're also adding those, what was it, 25 cameras or whatever, chief? Is that part of this IT? Is the new IT guy going to handle that? That's a separate deal, right? Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Director.
All right, unless there's any other questions in administration, we'll move on to CD, Community Development. Yeah, just to clarify, I know there wasn't any discussion on the IT person. Was that the consensus to
Move forward with
concur?
it. Yes.
Okay. That's what we were thinking, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So moving on to community development, which the org chart or whatnot begins on page 46 of the hard copy behind the community development tab. The reduction in personnel, again, the relocated position, and then the other position that's going to remain vacant within the department for at least the coming year. And then the increase in contractual services due to professional services largely related to the, I believe it's plan reviews within the department. It's a slight reduction in commodities, slight reduction in other, but those are the main drivers in CD.
Mayor, go ahead.
And Brad, just so everyone's clear, the decrease in the salaries and the increase in the contractual is still lower than what it was last year.
That is correct. Just moving on, just the operations of CD, to the mayor's point, you can see is about $194,000 less than it was last year. Then the building maintenance is just under $3,000 less as well. So overall, the department as a whole, just about $200,000 lower than last year. Moving on.
I'll make a comment.
Go ahead, Alderman Messina.
I just wanted to give kudos, which is rare during budget time, as we push towards self-service. There has been some painful moments as I've worked through multiple permits and kind of the guinea pig, but it is really good. And those up here, or those residents that are watching, you'd be nuts not to move to the automated billing system that we have. The permitting process is literally touchless. I have not touched it. I downloaded it. I made my payment all within the system. So kudos to you guys. It really makes me feel a lot better about all the consulting and the ERP implementation we've made, because it truly is a huge step forward, especially during COVID, where I didn't have to step foot in here. I literally did everything with my permit all within that system. So thank you and kudos.
But those residents that are not computer savvy, they can still come in and do it the old-fashioned way, correct? Go ahead.
Yeah, we would walk them through the process, and any resident that's uncomfortable using the computer or whatnot, it's not like they're not going to be able to get their permit.
Right.
While it's encouraged, we're going to find a way to get their permit completed.
Okay. Because I have a lot of seniors that are, we don't want to put them in that situation. They want to feel comfortable to come in and do it like they used to do it. Okay, thank you. Alderman Woods?
Thank you. I want to go back to building department personnel and inspectors. So we're adding, I'm trying to understand how this works or makes sense. In the building department, we really don't have any full-time inspectors, but we're hiring, we farm that out, right? And then the police department, where we siloed the property maintenance inspectors, we're gonna hire people to do inspections. Why would we hire people on the property maintenance side and not hire on the community development side?
Go ahead.
Well, I think it's apples to oranges. We've established, at least on the city manager side of things, and the council did approve of the transition a number of years ago, that we were going to transition property maintenance over to the CSO team, over to the PD side, as we thought that made the most sense. And comparing the building inspectors or housing zoning inspectors, rental properties, is obviously, as you know, a totally different discipline than a code enforcement officer or a property maintenance inspector who's going around looking at more aesthetic things from the street, grass, weeds, general upkeep of the property, as opposed to building code, things like that.
Right, and I get what you said, but I mean, it's like running two different business models. In-house employees versus subcontract employees. And I see value in each. I'm not arguing or discussing when we moved it to the police department, although I'll go back on record saying I still wasn't a fan of that, but.
Go ahead,
I think the main driver is obviously efficiency. And over the course of the years, at least since I've been here, we would try different ways to get the different jobs done, whether it be consultants or in-house. And it was found that probably for the community development discipline, it's been much easier and much smoother going the consultant route with some of these inspections and plan reviews and things like that, whereas property maintenance was pretty much an utter failure down in community development and has since been resurrected in the police department, who I think have done a fantastic job with the program. So it's different disciplines, and it's just efficiencies that we've noticed over the years that we feel as though right now this is working more efficient than it has ever done under this current system. Not to say that might not change or we might modify or tweak, but we feel as though it's the most efficient for the residents in this way, right now.
Alderman Jacob.
Yeah, so our housing zoning inspector is down to part-time.
What page is that, sir?
Well, I'm kind of looking at the personnel schedule, just the,
46?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just kind of like Art was. And contract inspectors, I mean, with the contract inspectors, I guess one of the issues I have with that is, people get to know the people in the city, and contract inspectors, they send different people out, and I've had a couple complaints in the past where we had no clue who the person even was, and we found out he was a contract inspector. So why would we not have somebody at least full-time in the housing zoning inspector?
Go ahead.
The housing zoning inspector was historically always part-time. We just recently moved that to be a full-time position, maybe not but a year or two ago. With the implementation of ERP, and now that's fully operational and rolling, that's cut down on a lot of the work hours needed to track and implement some of these inspections that the housing zoning inspector is doing. So we moved that down back to part-time. It saves us money, and we're just as efficient, if not probably more efficient.
Okay, follow up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess then we have, basically you're overseeing the department, then we have a senior planner and a building administrator. I just kind of feel when we cut a person out, it seems like these people are a little bit overstretched in that department. Like they're stretched thin a little bit, my
Go ahead.
opinion.
Well, we'll see how the year goes, like we talked about. This current fiscal year, the org chart is what we're going to aim for. I think we'll have a successful year. The employees that are down there are doing a good job. If we need to make modifications moving forward, we will. And obviously, don't forget, like Ed mentioned, with the implementation of ERP, like Alderman Messina had stated, while it's easier for residents to go online and do some of the stuff, it's also easier on the staff end of time consumption. A lot of these tasks are done more efficiently now, and we're saving time, so that saves hours, and we'll see what happens here, but I'm optimistic.
Okay. Alderman Messina?
And just a comment, I mean, you hopefully could validate or tell me I'm nuts, but from an inspection point of view, I've gotten a lot of clarity on like what they do. I almost feel like inspector is almost not the right word. It's very prescriptive. They come in, they know what they're looking for. When they came and inspect my windows, they looked at the rating, energy efficiency. Did it match that what I put on the permit? Did it match what's on that sticker? And it was boom, boom, boom. It's like a check. I'm not dismissing what they do. It's very prescriptive. Like this is what they do. Check the box. Messina, you pass. Go home. It's not like some thorough inspection where he's opening them, closing them, opening. You know, like that's not. I almost feel like that's a misleading name. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
You're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's why third party, as long as they know what they're looking for, I think is the right option. And I guess until you go through it, you realize.
Okay, moving right along. Let's go. Director Wilson, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving into finance, which is under the finance tab, page 50 of the budget book.
Okay.
You know, salaries down due to some staffing changes. You know, earlier this year, we had a long tenured employee leave, and just the new employee at a lower salary, just simple as that. Contractuals up a little bit due to some increased cost in professional services, and otherwise the last two categories are pretty unremarkable from a change standpoint.
Go ahead.
Moving on to the police department. So there are two expanded level items in the police department. Police tab, beginning on page 53, is the org chart. The org chart does include and is reflective of those changes of the two expanded level items. So with the personnel, like I said, largely tied to those two additional personnel, and then also increases in the contract. So again, personnel, it is what it is, like I said, based on the contract and the two expanded level items. And then the contractual, like I said, a slight increase projected for the dispatching contract, but then there were also some line items that were reduced as well to offset that. And then in other, again, the predominant driver is the police pension fund contribution.
Alderman Messina.
I turned off my microphone, hoping that I wouldn't have any more questions, so we can move this along. But Greg, I know you did a lot of work. The chief did a lot of work on restructuring the CSOs. In looking at the org chart and stuff, will this address the actual like weekend warriors that tend to do stuff without permits?
Go ahead, Chief.
Sure, and we have been doing some of that. CSO that was with us until late fall was actually working Saturdays and dealing with some of that. So our plan would be with this too is to, with the two people that are just dedicated to property maintenance issues, is have them around on some weekends, maybe not every weekend. But we also, Sundays, sometimes we've had our sergeants that have noticed things or neighbors that complain. So we are aware that some of the things happening on the weekends we want to be there for. So that will be a component of it. Maybe not every single weekend, but there will be quite a few of them.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Jacob.
Yeah, as far as, and I did talk to you today, Greg, on this. With staff, you know, retirements and everything, it seems like we're always low on, it seems like we're always short-staffed. Now, so we have 7 officers, and 7 officers on the different shifts. So now are we bringing in people, giving people overtime hours to fill those vacant positions or places where we're short people?
Go ahead, Chief.
Sure. So yeah, it depends on the day, I guess is the best answer. In the fall, we were down at one point 2 full positions, 2 people in training, and 1 on maternity leave, so we're actually down 5 people. So we're constantly making adjustments. There was a period of time we went with 2 detectives. We're currently at 3. And then road, it depends on what's going on with training, regular days off. Just remember, even if with 7 people on a shift, at a minimum, 2 people are off every day because of rotating days off, just because to cover 7 days of shift. And then if you have, if you're down one person on that shift, you're already at 4 minimums, and our minimums are a watch commander plus minimum 3 personnel on all shifts. So our overtime was higher this year than it has been in the past, but we were also down significant on the salary side. So our hope is, as we get closer to fully staffed, we'll return to previous overtime numbers that were, much less than this past year was. So it's a daily juggle of schedules.
Follow up?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, I guess my whole point of this is, wouldn't it almost be better to overhire, like hire an extra police officer? Because it doesn't seem like, with the retirements and everything, it always seems like we're still short. So instead of having, 7, I mean, wouldn't it be good to maybe overhire and get 1 extra police officer, so at least we could be closer to
Chief?
being, full staffed, where we should be at?
Well, I think some things come into play with that. It's true, we're always at a premium for hiring people. The process to hire a new person, we'll go through 5 to 7 backgrounds just to hire one person. Then the testing process and just getting into the academy is a 2 to 3 month process. The academy is 4 months long, and then we have 4 months of training. So right now, we hired someone in beginning of January. They complete the academy near the end of April. They won't be on their own until August. So that is a concern, but I don't think you can really go with 3 extra. We do talk with the manager and try and get ahead of if we know retirements are happening as far as, some time windows. We have an upcoming retirement coming in the support services side, and we're going to try and have someone hired by the time they leave so we don't have that turnover. So just like every other agency, it's a process and it takes a while to get there. So, but I think increasing the budget number by 3, there will be periods that we go through that we are close to fully staffed, and that might not be the best use of the resources. We just keep trying, staying on it, and the board, as a volunteer organization, they're really dedicated. They put in a lot of time to hiring those people too.
Okay, thank you.
Director?
Sure, thank you. So moving on, Chief, now I'll stay there. We're getting into the expanded level items. The first one's the administrative sergeant, which is on page 55 of the budget book. Again, more written prose on there than I could fit on the slide, or wanted to fit on the slide. And again, I would defer to Chief Vesta for any detailed questions.
Any question on that expanded item? We have a consensus to move forward and to keep that in the budget? Okay, go ahead, Director. Oh, Alderman Woods?
Yeah, so just checking in on the numbers. So that's 5 sergeants done officially? How many sergeants do we have? 6?
That would be 6 total then. And then we would look to allocate 2 per shift. Some of the benefit of that too, even though a person would primarily be doing a lot of these administrative things, since the last time we did any type of real restructuring down there, it's been 11 years. The new state mandates for training, body camera review, a lot of things, and a lot of these daily duties that they do. We'd like to put the regular street supervisors out on the street more. What we're seeing, and if you, not only through Wooddale and whatever else, the radio is lit up every day with high-profile situations all around us too, that, some have come through town. Having our supervisors out on the street, there's new use of force guidelines, increased mental health calls, domestics, having that extra level of supervision out there takes them away from some of the administrative stuff and then get them out on the street. But this administrative sergeant would also fill in, be a watch commander too, and do some of those duties. And what that would also help reduce is a little bit of the officer in charge program. We use that where we, like right now, we have officers that are, in line for potential promotions down the road that'll fill in as supervisors on a particular shift. We would reduce the use of that. Just with our size agency, it's impossible to cover 24 hours a day, 365 with 5 sergeants, because any type of day off, you'd have to hire a sergeant back at full overtime for the full 8-hour shift, whereas we kind of use it as a development thing for officers in charge to learn how to be supervisors, and then they get 1 hour of overtime for a shift to supervise it for that 8-hour shift. So we'd be looking to reduce some of that usage too.
Okay, I think that, because part of my question was gonna be, and I think you answered it, why sworn versus unsworn, if it's an administrative function, but the way that you weave that in kind of answered that question, that it has to be a sworn person. So I was looking at, we took CSOs to non-sworn, non-uniform positions, right? So just checking how we put that together.
And
Go ahead.
if I could, while this isn't necessarily dependent on what we do with PMI, part of that's playing into this too with the ERI that the city passed. We're looking to save about $35,000 by that retirement and adjust the duties for a new person, and then switch some of the emergency management duties to this sworn administrative sergeant position. So, and what this will be is this will be open to all the current sergeants and/or the new sergeant. There's no predetermined that it has to be the next sergeant would be the admin sergeant. This would be something that we would open up as a, not necessarily a promotional opportunity, but an opportunity to, have experience in administrative stuff and succession planning too as we go forward.
Follow up? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. You didn't get that was Alderman Woods, right? So, go ahead.
Is this gonna be basically a day shift position only, right?
Yeah, this would be primarily, they will be used to fill in on different shifts as needed. All of our sergeants, we have to use them sometimes on different shifts, but primarily they would be day shift. That's when the liaison with the academies, with the Department of Corrections, with, a number of things occur, and, you need them around primarily during the daytime.
Okay. Go ahead, Director. Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next is the property maintenance expended level item on page 56 of the book. And this would be, again, a new body for the police department. And again, I would have to defer to the chief for details on the position or structure of the department.
Go ahead, Mayor.
So Chief, at one time we had 4, then we went down to 3, then when we started doing PMI, we went back up to 4. Now we're looking to go to 5, but 2 of them would be non-uniform, right? A little more casual, so that people don't think we have the police, right? Is that the understanding I got with this?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. As you might recall, when we started this, it was to handle the big complaints, right? And the complaints that come in from either residents or elected officials, whatever it is. They've already handled 560 complaints or so, and only 5 of those haven't been closed out. So in strategic plan last fall, there was a desire, and even before that, to be a little bit more proactive in some of these things. And, there was a little bit of easing of some restrictions during COVID, such as signage and things, that would allow us to focus on some of those and be more proactive in the neighborhoods for the real issues. But I think our goal was, well, not at the time, but as we've evolved into this, having uniforms handle the initial need to take this over and do it has been great, and they've done a fantastic job. But, with everything that's happened over the last few years, I'd like to shift the focus to a non-uniformed and not the squad car coming down the street and measuring the grass. It's just, there's a lot of perception issues with police, and taking it down a level and, not being in a squad car, not in a uniform, we think that'll be a little bit better approach, especially if we get a little more proactive on some of this. It's not just us responding to complaints now, it's us out identifying some additional things.
Okay. So we have Alderman Woods. Go ahead. Yeah.
So they're non-sworn, non-uniform, right? So they're IMRF, not
Correct.
police pension. So we're back to kind of where we're at. How come they're not under the building department umbrella? We can't manage them there, or they're better managed in the police department?
Go ahead.
I would think that, we talked about this before, the CSO structure and the structure of the police department lends itself to better serve this program from what I've experienced. It just seems like they get better candidates when it's that specific position and it is managed better in their structure.
that really is predicated on before they were CSOs, they were sworn, or non-sworn CSO, but they were still police department employees, not. And they had a career path other than the maintenance guy. Let's be honest that they thought that that was a foot up in the police department, I'm assuming with a lot of them. And now that's taken away. And I'm not judging good or bad, I'm just trying to go, why does it work here then when it's really the same thing and not in the department? And if you're telling me it's just a manager, then maybe we need a different manager.
Well,
Chief, you want to answer?
it's still a CSO, it's a PMI division CSO. I mean, I'll let the chief.
Yeah, and, I actually, what we would do is we would open the PMI position as a non-uniform to our current personnel first if they wanted to do it. Certainly, they've done a good job with the PMI stuff. But I would view it as a similar, people that are looking to have a step up in law enforcement. I think it will still give them a chance to do it as a, hey, I worked with, in preparation for a law enforcement career, if that's the candidate that we find. I was in the report writing system. I dealt with people. I learned how to do court testimony. It can still be viewed as a stepping stone towards a law enforcement career if they want to. And, we've had very good success with people that wanted to be law enforcement officers doing it. The other side, depending on our needs, we might take someone that's near the end of their career goals and maybe doesn't want to be the police. And we've had good luck with both. Sometimes with the ones that want to be the full sworn officer, they're going to be more short-term, but they're going to work really hard for you. Other people might come into this as I've done something else for a number of years, and I'm completely comfortable doing this and doing a good job, so.
I just wanted to see that, I think that was the right word, the enticement over and above the community development department, that it was a career path, and there are similar thought processes, right, enforcement, albeit, lower level ordinances or regulations. All right, thank you.
Alderman Jacob.
Will this person, because we already have, the other person's already a uniformed person, so this person coming in, will they be cross-trained to help out the other CSOs if at any point needed, and vice versa?
Go ahead, Chief.
So that's something we probably will not be doing a lot of unless absolutely necessary, because when you've got to outfit a CSO in uniform, the pants, even our pants, our certain uniform pants are expensive. We have to buy them bulletproof vests because some people don't know the difference from them and a sworn officer, so we buy a vest for all of them. The vehicle things are more. So I don't want to bring in a non-uniformed PMI person, spend $2,000 in uniforms, and then they're gone in a year if it's not going to be a long-term spot for them. So in an absolute pinch, but we want to bring some stability to PMI too, and if council wants some of that more proactive, we're not going to want to be pulling them off of that to do street duty either.
Alderman Messina, you had a
Just
question?
a quick comment, right, because I know we talked a lot about this, and there was a lot of great work. If the idea was more casual clothes, maybe polos, but also the vehicle branding would be a little different, more like a typical CSO vehicle, right? Still have some of the wrap, but not so, what's the word?
Police.
Intimidating, as a police car, I guess you'd say. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, certainly what I think you won't see is a car with lights and everything else. We still have to come up with some type of branding, but it'll be obvious that it's a city car and/or city police department car, and some type of designation on the side as to what their role is. And certainly if they're out on a scene, they're going to have a radio and everything else that if they need assistance, there's going to be a CSO or an officer right there with them too. Because we have that now with CSOs sometimes. They're not sworn, and certain situations they get into, we need to have a sworn officer there with them. So none of that will change.
Mayor, you had a question?
Actually, I was just going to bring up the car, that it's going to be separate from the police squad cars or the CSO trucks we have now. That's all. No problem.
Okay, so we have a consensus in approving this, moving this? No? Go ahead, Alderman Sorrentino, go ahead.
All right, now I know everyone here has received in their packet this evening the annual report from the Wooddale Police Department, and we're having this conversation right now. I think after you review this report, an officer in Wooddale that passes you I guarantee you, you'll be shaking their hand. Chief, this report is beyond stellar in its preparation, and the numbers that are in this report tells us how fortunate we are to have a police department that we have, especially when you look at the surrounding communities and just the per capita police to residents. We're like 2.32, much higher than any other community. So we're doing really, really well with our serve and protect. And I want to personally compliment the entire team known as the Wooddale Police Department. And when I see the social issues that you're involved in, the mental health crisis you're involved in, it just goes beyond congratulations. And I'm just happy to say I'm a resident of Wooddale and I sleep better at night. So thank you so much for all of what you do, and you're doing a great job.
I appreciate it. It's a team effort, and,
Yes,
you know,
it
we
is.
appreciate the support from all of council and, you know, the rest of city staff and the community, because we can't do it without the community either. So it's a whole group effort, and thanks for the support.
Thank you.
Good job,
It's
Chief.
better when the grass is just under 6
Yes,
inches
I
next door.
understood.
Then,
So, moving right along, so we're consensus
mental
in
health
keeping this,
crisis
okay.
team. They'll be
Go ahead,
ready.
Director Wilson, let's go.
Good job, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to the Fire and Police Commission, page 59 of the book. You know, there's no testing this year. I believe it's every 6 years, they have to do both tests in one particular year. Last year was that magic year, and so this year we have a year off. It's a 2 and a 3 year cycle. So that's why that's down. Next year it'll be up a little bit, and then it'll say it increased because there's testing.
Okay. Go ahead.
Moving on to Public Works Administration.
Alderman Jacobs, I'm sorry, Alderman Jacobs got a question.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't, can we just go back to page 57 real quick in the police?
Too late.
The seasonal employment, was that like the crossing guards, or what's seasonal employment? Because I see that's down to 0.
The pool crossing guards.
Yeah.
Are we not going to be having them anymore? Or?
Go ahead, Chief.
March 10th, we will be discussing that, but no, we likely are going to request the elimination of that along with the Park District, and I've got some figures for you and a rationale behind that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a Public Works Administration, which is beginning on page 61 of the book. Again, not a whole lot going on, just some minor reductions in various line items, no changes in staff.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Moving on to Streets Division, which is beginning on page 64. There is the one expanded level item in here. So decrease in personnel. There was a non-ERI retirement, and then there was some internal transfers of a couple of employees moving around, so that's why salaries are down. Same number of staff in the department. Like I said, just some less tenured people. And contractual is up due to the landscaping of city properties, the existing program, putting a little bit more money into, as well as the expanded level item, which is on page 66, which is the next slide in the deck. Unless there's any questions on the core operations of the Streets Division.
Any questions on the expanded item? Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, so, just so I understand, this is for the city entryway signs and whatnot. We already have people doing the clock tower, the Veterans Memorial. This is just really added on to that, correct?
Go ahead.
Correct.
Okay.
So, any more questions on that? So we're going to accept that? Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Moving along to vehicle maintenance. Pretty unremarkable. There was a retirement with the ERI, and so again, it's just the lower salary of the newer employee in there. And vehicle maintenance beginning on page 69 behind the vehicle maintenance tab.
Go ahead.
Okay. That.
Alderman Sismarski, you had a question?
Yeah. For Brad, for Mr. Lincoln, is this including the one position we have open right now, or?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yes, we currently have one position that is posted, but assuming that that position will be at a much lower salary than the retirement. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Continue.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that actually was the last division in the general fund. Mr. Alderman Jacob.
Alderman Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, page 63 before we move on. For uniforms, that's not just for the 3 administration, that's for all the public works, is that correct?
63.
Page 63, it's the uniform that's on the public works administration, 16,000, that's for the entire department, correct?
Correct.
And how is that, how much money does each person in the public works get for uniform allowance? How does that work?
I defer to Mr. Lang.
Go ahead.
I know office personnel is 200.
The number for union employees is set by the collective bargaining agreement. I believe it's at $600 per employee per year.
Right.
Now, what about the non-union? I mean,
They probably get the same.
Administrative staff have a budget of, I think, 200, 250? 200.
okay.
Okay, thank you. That's it?
I think
Follow up?
Brad has something.
Okay. Brad? go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, just the non-union staff, we take, it's effectively a great union term, a Me Too, which whatever the office personnel in the CBA, then that's just what we have taken as well. That way there's no accusations that we're giving ourselves more for being non-union or whatever, so we tied ourselves to that number.
Okay, go, continue.
Thank you. So like I said, that's the last, unless there's any other questions, the last division in the general fund. So we will continue on into the special revenue funds. So here's the summary page. We did add this on the front end just so you can kind of see what's coming up with the net change within each fund. The one that obviously jumps off the page is TIF District 1, but that's, again, predominantly the Public Works facility. And again, everything else in here is largely planned out and by design. So we'll move on to the Road and Bridge Fund, beginning on page 72 of the book. Again, pretty much is everything pretty much the same in here. There was a slight increase in the transfer to the SURF fund. So we're to the point of the SURF schedule where we are going to be replacing a number of the plow trucks, I believe all 6 plow trucks in consecutive years. So we are just increasing that transfer for a little bit to help with a little bit of a bubble in replacing those plow trucks. And obviously the plows maintain the roads, so road and bridge fund makes some sense to help offset those costs.
Go ahead, Alderman Jacob.
Just for the next few pages, the interfund transfers that go to general fund, how do you come up with those dollar amounts?
Go ahead.
Sure, so the road and bridge fund, interfund transfer, doesn't have one to the general
Yeah,
fund?
no, I'm just saying for the next few pages, because some of them really didn't make sense, and I'm just curious, how do you arrive at that number, or how much money goes to interfund transfer to the general fund?
Sure. So it's a little bit of a formula and then a little bit of honestly rounding to make the numbers look nice. You know, because what we do is we take kind of an estimate of what staff's time, so take the water fund, there's actually a pretty well-developed mathematical equation for that. But some of the other ones, you know, okay, if it's 10% of Mr. Lang's time, 5% of my time, 5% of the manager's time, and we add all that up. You know, if the number is 148,932, you know, we could put that in there, but we like dealing with zeros at the end, so we'll just round it up to 150. So we take an estimate of the staff that's not budgeted out of that particular fund or division as a function of the time that we think we spend on an annual basis dealing with that particular fund or function, and then kind of work through it that way.
Okay, I'll ask some more specific questions, but I was just in general wanting to know how you come up with that number.
Go ahead, Mayor.
So, bringing up the big plow trucks, what's the longevity of those trucks? Is it 10 years, 12 years?
Go ahead.
We typically target to replace those every 15 years or so, but
Even better.
they're assessed annually like all other vehicles and
Right,
replaced
okay.
at appropriate timing.
Okay, I couldn't remember the amount, and I should have called you beforehand, but 15 years sounds even better to me. Perfect.
Alderman Sismarski.
Yeah, you have noticed the difference between quality of the vehicle, are these lasting better or handling better than the international?
I personally wouldn't be able to tell you that. I wasn't here for a large, since they changed over, but the vehicles that we have now are holding up pretty well. We're looking to replace with possibly Peterbilts in the near future. Seems to be the trend among other public works agencies. But given the current climate and supply issues, it may be a little while here before we can get our hands on one of those.
Future person will do the same multi-unit changeover, like the bed and the assault,
With the liquid injection system, yes,
where it's multifaceted, where the truck can have all the different compartments.
correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I've got a question on page 73 on the Royal Oaks gas. How does that, who controls those lights? I mean, utilities are going up, and when I go there sometimes during the day, those lights are still on when it's daytime. Are they controlled by a timer?
Natural gas. All the time.
You're doing in my neighborhood, man.
Yeah, well, sometimes I have to cut through, from 83, and then I see those lights on during the day. I mean, those gases burning during the day. I'm sorry? Right, but
You'd have to have somebody come through and turn them all back.
to me, it's a waste, but go ahead. Yeah, can anybody
I
answer that?
understand the question, but I don't know how they operate. I guess we could try to find out.
Yeah.
I don't, as we're sitting here tonight, I can't give you a good answer
Right,
on that.
okay.
It should be on a timer.
They should be on the timer, right?
I would think, but-
Okay, thank you. Continue.
Okay. Sure, moving on to the next fund, motor fuel tax, beginning on page 74. Again, not a lot going on, high level with this one. The inclusion of the interfund transfer this year is for the Elizabeth Drive Bridge. We do have the STPB funding for that. The city does have a match. And we've told HR Green and the appropriate parties that we're going to be using the MFT fund as the city's match for that particular
And
project.
how much is that, Director?
Well, this year it's 30,000. I believe long-term it's, was it over $500,000? It's 25% of the total cost of the bridge project.
Any questions? Okay, continue, please.
Moving on to the tourism fund on page 76. In other, we added back in a significant set of costs related to Prairie Fest. And then you may have noticed in the manager's report within the last couple of weeks, some language about the city signage program. So we did increase that line item to try and, get as much of that finished off as we could in the near term.
I see the video gaming is $0 collected. Was that moved to a different area?
Correct. That was moved to the water fund a number of years ago.
And it's still there at the water fund, or?
As of this exact moment in time, yes,
Oh,
it's still
good.
budgeted
Okay.
out of the water fund.
Thank you. Alderman Jacob?
Here's kind of where I came up with that question with earlier.
Got a lot of gambling to pay for that 20 million per now.
So the interfund transfer, we're transferring out 250,000 to the general fund, which puts this fund into the negative $120,000. Why would we not adjust that? Why would we put the fund into the negative versus instead of 250, keep, at least be at a zero or at a positive number down on the bottom and take less out to transfer to the general fund?
Go ahead.
Sure, so, and this actually happened
in fiscal '21, you are correct that the fund itself needs to stay above zero. So what we had to do in fiscal '21 was adjust that transfer to account for that with the significant decrease in hotel motel revenues. So at this point in time, that's what the number has historically been and what the target number is. And then depending on where these other projects come in, special events, the signage, economic development, things of that nature, kind of the number that's going to be the proverbial, that's going to augment to account for that bottom line will be that transfer to the general fund. So that's what we want, that's what the number should be based upon our analysis. But at the end of the year, if the tourism fund is in a negative state, then that will get reduced to cover that.
Okay, go ahead, follow up.
So, yeah, I guess I'm confused. So it will be zero, it's not going to be negative at the end of the year? So it's that 250 number will be adjusted before?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, presupposing that absent an adjustment to that number, the ending fund balance would be anything less than zero, then yes, we would adjust that 250 to make sure that that bottom number in the lower right-hand corner is no less than 1.
Okay.
Okay, so more than likely, it's not going to be 250,000 taken out of this fund then, based on what?
Time will tell, but
Okay.
that would be the number that would get adjusted.
Okay.
Continue, please. Go ahead.
Moving on to narcotics forfeiture, it's the same as in previous years. But this is the account that helps pay for some of the expenses with the K-9 unit.
Continue.
Sure, thank you. Moving on to TIF 1, the Thorndale Corridor TIF, beginning on page 81 of the book. So quite a bit of an increase this year. Again, the Interfund Transfer related to the Public Works campus, capital outlay related to some potential land acquisition costs, and contractual services just related to potential studies or just some work that we may need to have done just on a professional level. It's kind of an unknown, but we do like to put some money in there in case we do need to do some studies or have some analysis. Like SB Free, if somebody comes forward with a TIF petition for TIF funding, we send that to SB Friedman. That would come out of that particular line item for Friedman to analyze that TIF funding request. So there's no specific plans per se for that line item, but that would be there in case we need to retain somebody like an SB Friedman or do some other water topographical study, things of that nature.
Okay, continue.
TIF 2, the town center. This is predominantly really just waiting on the development next door for this to get going. Unlike TIF 1, this is largely going to pay back the developer from their own increment. So as of right now, that's why there's nothing budgeted out of here, because at this point in time, we're still waiting for them to come in. So.
Okay.
All right, that's special revenues. Moving on to the capital project fund segment, which is beginning on page 85. There's a net effect change of the two funds within the capital projects fund designations. On 85 is the general capital projects fund. That's what we discussed back in early January at a committee meeting, those plans. There were slight modifications based upon the conversations from those nights, from that night. I believe before that meeting, but after the book had been issued, we found out that we did not get the CDBG grant, so we removed that. We increased the funding a little bit for the rail merger situation that's going on. And then there were some just other minor tweaks that came out of that meeting, and those were included and are reflective in the final numbers here on page 87 of the budget book.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the mayor had a...
Mayor?
So, just looking at this, you're showing a net change of negative 1.3 million, but that's just a change. The ending balance is still almost just over 800,000. because I brought out the CIP, I was looking at this, I'm like, what is the problem here? Why are we, like, how do we pass a CIP and we're spending more than we have? And I'm trying to figure that out, but some of the out years I noticed, right, that 800,000 becomes higher, and but we're not negative $1.3 million. It's just, we're taking from money that's sitting there. Okay.
That's correct, yes.
Continue, Director.
Thank you. Land Acquisition Fund, at this time, there's nothing budgeted up there, so anything related to land acquisition, purchase of properties would have to come back before the council, before anything could be accomplished. So at this point, there's nothing in there. I believe there might be one on the horizon, but again, with nothing definite, there's no expenses currently budgeted out of here.
Okay. Continue.
Moving on to the commuter parking lot, enterprise level funds. There's the 3 enterprise funds in here. Moving on to page 90 for the commuter parking lot. Lot of, down numbers in here. The commuter parking lot, if you look at the numbers on page 91, those first 2 lines, if you look at the actuals in 2020 to the actual in 21, if you wonder what the impact of COVID was on the lot, there it is for you. I mean, the daily parking fees is down, 90%, and the parking permits was down, about 75 to 80%. Daily starting to come back, the permits are a little slower to come back. And so with that in mind, some of the items haven't been as in demand, such as commodities. If there's less people there, they're using, the bathrooms less, things of that nature. So we've been able to dial that back a little bit, acknowledging the decrease in the ridership and utilization of the station. The decrease in the transfer, there was, in previous year, a capital project related to the station, and obviously since that's done or phasing out, that transfer went back down to its standard number. And then again, the other was just, again, more, that's, the others related to credit card fees. And again, with the decrease in utilization, the fees have gone down.
Alderman Jacob, you had a question?
Yeah, on this one, at some point, and I brought this up in the past, the numbers, I mean, I've used the train station often, and people complain because you can't see the numbers, especially when it snows. I mean, could we look at putting something up with numbers where other communities, I think we used to have something years ago. I think we took it down. I think we used to have numbers up above. There used to be like I think there'll be, before it gets back to full operation, I think we should look at doing something with that. I mean, I see a lot of people confused about that when they're there, like what to pay, like how much to pay, what number, they don't know where they're at.
We should also look at the fees too that we charge compared to the surrounding communities, but that's a question for another day. Go ahead, Director Wilson, and continue.
Okay. Yeah, I would say we could look at a line study, and then I'm sure Mr. Lang took a note on the numbering out there.
Good.
Moving on to the Sanitation Fund, which is on page 93 of the book. Not a whole lot exciting here. You may recall we did the contract extension with Flood Brothers, so that's reflective in here. The transfer to the general fund was decreased by $100,000. You may have noticed the transfer in the water fund to the general fund went up by $100,000. There is a little bit of a teeter-totter relationship between these two at this point, and that was largely planned probably 5 years ago when that structure was changed. So this is not an unexpected shift and reallocation of those transfers. It's just this is the point in time that we're at.
Now, a question on the Wooddale for agreement tomorrow. We have that budget. Is that coming out of the Flood Brothers? Are they picking that cost up? Go ahead.
Sure, so this would be for, like, kind of, I guess, like the city programs, like the Rain Barrel, and the, some of the costs related to the Green Fair,
Mhm.
and things like that. I believe in the past few years, especially with, the decrease in free electronics collection, we're one of the only games in town, so that we've seen an appreciation in those costs the last couple of years. So trying to recognize that event's been a little more, largely successful. It has cost the city a little bit more if you look at the previous couple of years. So we did increase that number to be reflective of what we think those programs are going to cost next year.
Alderman Sismarski.
The scavenger service, that's the one stuff that garbage won't pay.
No, that's just the bill that we pay to Flood Brothers.
Cost of sanitation service too?
So the sanitation service at the top, that's the revenue from what we bill the residents. And the top part of the page, and then right in the middle, that scavenger service, that's the bill to Flood Brothers, what we pay to Flood Brothers.
Okay. Go ahead, Director.
Sure, so moving on to Water and Sewer Fund. A summary of the revenues of the Water and Sewer Fund. So the increase in overall, so the increase, like video gaming has gone up within the Water and Sewer Fund. There's been a couple of other line items that went down within the Water and Sewer Fund. Penalties have gone down a little bit, and some of the other, like tap-on and miscellaneous fees have gone down.
Mayor, you had a question?
Yeah, actually I do. So the video gaming, when we started, was about 80 to 90,000. Now I see the number, we're projecting 210,000. This year we're in right now, we're looking at 200,000. We had moved this money over to help with the water fund and whatnot.
Right.
Are we gonna keep giving it always? We had two big raises, and I know there's a discussion coming up the last 2 years. My understanding was we were gonna be fairly sufficient. We've got other facade programs and things. At least half of this should go back, because eventually we had figured 100,000, now it's at 200,000. But the other one that kills me, I love this one, is the transfer to the general fund, 400,000 to 500,000. But earlier I heard with ERP, we were able to save a lot of money, so we don't have as much administrative cost. But here we have to add an extra 100,000 in transfer. I'm sure this is administrative cost. Didn't we save any money on the ERP for this fund? Just curious.
Go ahead, Director.
There's a lot in there. The video gaming, that's a pure policy decision amongst the 9 of you. And you may recall, my exact wording was, at this moment in time, it's all in the Water and Sewer Fund, so that's not for staff to decide, that's for the 9 of you to decide. And the transfer, as I mentioned on the previous slide, the transfer was higher.
Can I follow up on
And
the video gaming?
Go ahead.
So if the video gaming goes to 400,000, we're just going to leave it all there too? At what point do we stop putting all the video gaming money into this
Go ahead.
fund?
When you tell us to.
We're supposed to do it for 1 year.
I mean, it's a policy decision. The last direction we got from the
Okay.
council was to leave it in the water
And,
fund. If that policy changes, then we'll.
Right,
revisit it.
okay, but
I guess April 28th, we got the water rates coming up, right? So can that be discussed then?
Or it could be discussed now.
Yeah.
or
It's up to you.
because, yeah, it's like in perpetuity, forever. We're trying to do facade programs. And I think, that's right, go ahead.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in, that was always supposed to be a temporary thing
1 year.
at the time, whether it was 1 or 2 years, I can't recall, but it was always temporary, so.
Yeah, 2019.
At some point, it's gotta come out. that conversation's not gonna take place tonight. I'm
Right.
sure.
But it's correct, it was earmarked, but we let it go 1 year and you offset.
Okay, moving right along.
No, wait, what,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mayor.
the transfer of funds. I'm just curious if are we saving anything with ERP for administrative type costs and for this? Because I've always heard that, well, that's administrative costs and you can figure the money and this and that. So I'm just curious. Do we save any money
Go ahead.
or not this account?
So yeah, I'll add the gaming note to the water rate conversation
Okay.
coming up. Well, as I said in the Sanitation Fund, a number of years ago with the new Flood Brothers contract, there was a shift in the transfer to the general fund. There was a significant shift from all out of the water fund, and that shifted over to the Sanitation Fund. And now that's moving back. There was some cost savings early on with the ERP, a couple of years ago, within the water fund. At this point, that's kind of stabilized, and those cost savings, I think, were a lot with the building department, things of that nature. The water department itself, predominantly, aside from the billing software, doesn't use ERP. Yeah, they do a little bit, but they're more, kind of boots on the ground type of thing. And so, yeah, there's not as many synergies with main breaks and whatnot as there would be with permits with the ERP software.
Alderman Jacob.
Yeah, I had the same thing circled that the mayor's asking about. So at the end, total expenses, income loss, we're at a minus 508,000, but yet we're going to transfer 500,000. Again, why are we transferring so much? And what would have happened if we transferred nothing out of there?
Go ahead.
So two things. One, if you're on page 97, the deficit of 508,000 is after depreciation. On a cash basis, the water and sewer fund is showing a surplus of 586,000. Depreciation is non-cash, and so we really base the budgeting off of the numbers in the box, not the number 3 numbers below. And your question of what if we transfer nothing, if you take the ARPA money out, you start with $180,000. If you don't transfer anything, then the general fund has a deficit of $320,000, which the council would not allow and staff would not present. So if you don't transfer that money, then you have a structural deficit in the general fund because you're not reimbursing the general fund for any administrative costs. Ergo, the staff would then rebudget all of those costs out of the water fund worth about $500,000, and you'd be back in the exact same point you were before, just with a lot more work and a lot more headache.
Mayor.
I don't mean to be a stickler with this, but this is always a pain for me. So I'm looking at 238,000 in sanitation, 500,000 in the water. That's 738,000. I know it's administrative costs. If I look at the finance department, general fund, personnel, salaries, overtime, all that stuff, and I see 491,000. We're moving 738,000. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, and I should have asked you this the other day, but I know I've been a little busy last couple of weeks, and I apologize, but I'd really love to get some clarification on why we're transferring 738 when the salaries for personnel only with FICA and IMRF are 491.
That's in the finance department?
Yeah. I would imagine that's who's handling the billing, right?
Well-
I don't think that's coming out of Mr. Lang's
Go ahead.
department. I don't know.
Well, Mr. Hastings, who's in the general fund in public works administration, spends probably half of his time dealing with managing the utilities division. There is a significant portion of the finance department's time. There's community development time that works on that. There's administration, the manager's office, the manager himself, Director Buggy dealing with personnel issues and insurance claims, things of that nature. So it's not the finance department. There is a full-blown breakdown of those costs in the budget. I can circulate that as early as
Yeah.
tomorrow if we want to.
Yeah.
And there's
doesn't have-
some overhead and insurance and stuff like that.
It doesn't have to be tomorrow, but I really would like to understand, because I know we're going to come for that water discussion. I'm going to hit the ceiling if if I even hear we gotta raise the water in 4 weeks, I'm probably gonna blow the roof off this building. It's not gonna happen.
Keep the gaming in there. Okay, moving right along.
Sure. Summary of the operating expenses by division in the water fund. Utilities, they had a significant attrition due to the ERI, the early retirement, so that's predominantly what's driving their decrease. Wastewater had a little bit, and then there was also some individual line items. And then capital, again, that was discussed a month ago at the CIP meeting. Moving on to utilities, the expenses, again, and pardon, that's beginning on page 98. Again, personnel down to ERI, contractual due to some decrease in personnel and professional services. A lot of that, I believe, was due to the water resiliency study not being needed to be completed this year. Interfund, we discussed, and we'll circulate that. And then a decrease related to credit card fees. We have seen a shift. We put the thing in the flyer in the water bill a month or two ago, and we have seen an uptick in people taking advantage of both the auto debit program and the recurring credit card program. And then there has just been a general shift as well to some more check paying versus credit cards. I'm not sure what's driving that per se, but that's all what's kind of leading to the reduction in credit card fees.
That's a good thing. Okay. Wait.
Tom?
Go ahead.
Brad, the seasonal employment, we budgeted 7,000 and spent 12,730. Is the 7,000 going to be enough for this year? Or why do we go over by like $5,000?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I know the employee that was there. I think he pretty much ran right up until his IMRF limit of hours. I believe in past years when we had somebody in there, they hadn't been around for that long, so that was kind of what we were basing that number off of. And so we had somebody that was pretty good this year that wanted to maximize that. So I guess in theory we could have put it back up there, but we were kind of figuring that it would be more to the norm, which is them not being around the entire time. If it does begin to be a trend after this year, then we'll certainly look to increase that in future years.
And is the director okay with that, being at 7,000?
I mean, he's the one that put it in, so.
Okay. Go ahead, continue.
Sure, on to wastewater. Excuse me. Again, with personnel, there was what's ultimately going to be one retirement in there, so just a realigning of those salaries. Contractual and commodities, just various miscellaneous adjustments to line items, nothing significant. The principal and interest payments, one goes up, one goes down. That's a teeter-totter, just like the mortgage at your house. Just, when you start off, you're paying a lot of interest, and then near the end, you're paying more principal. So it's a similar concept to that. So nothing significant about those two numbers moving the way that they're moving. The Interfund Transfer, part of that is SURF, and part of that is the general fund, one, and the decrease in other. With ERP, running all of the capital assets through there, we've been able to fine-tune depreciation expense a little bit better based on just some of the system metrics, and so that's why that is down in the other category.
Okay, continue.
Capital, like I said, we discussed this back in January, but this would be where the capital expenses for the water and sewer fund would come out of. This is just accounting for what is budgeted this year, not anything that's out in the future that could be pending. Again, that was in the CIP meeting a month ago.
Okay. Next.
Moving on to the SURF Fund, beginning on page 108. So expenses did increase a little bit this year, but again, that's always kind of been planned where we're pre-funding the purchases. We're taking somewhere between 1/6 and 1/7 of the vehicle cost each year and putting it into here as a sinking fund. So there's going to be years where the balance is going up, and there's going to be years that the balance is going down. But the funding of it overall has been relatively smooth, so that's why we're able to avoid the significant peaks and valleys in the funding levels, which has been great, because one year, again, if we have to replace a plow truck, 2 plow trucks for $400,000, and the next year we only replace 1 car, the numbers are going up and down. So we've been able to smooth that out, which has been great for the stability and the structural integrity of the general and water fund going forward.
Continue.
Over to the fiduciary funds, again, these are monies that aren't specifically the cities, but we do have to account for them. So the police pension fund, you can see here, both are up the contractuals related to investment expenses and then benefit payments in the other category. And this, again, the actuaries put this together. Obviously, we're still, looking at the consolidation, so we're not quite sure what all that's going to look like probably this time next year. But as of now, this is what we're expecting based upon the current state of things relative to the pension fund. Lastly, the special service area. This is really just a debt service fund at this point. I believe there's 2 or 3 more years left of these SSAs, 12, 13, and 14. And then those will be paid off, and then this will drop out. But at this point, the only expenses in there are the debt payments for the bonds. And so the revenue is the property tax money that comes in, and then the debt payments go out. That's all that's going on in the SSA funds at this time. And we do have the 2 dormant ones, but as of now, there's nothing going on with those.
And that's it. And I'll make the motion.
Second. We got a question.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
You already
That's
made the
okay.
motion.
You got a motion and a second, and then I can answer questions.
I'm
Go
not
ahead.
answering.
You can answer.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna make the motion.
Oh,
Well, I'll make the motion to approve the budget as proposed and to include all the
yeah,
expanded items. That is my motion.
and he's second. All right.
All right.
Roll call?
Look at that, even with all the questions, we still.
Alderman Ames.
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Currielli.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Messina.
Yes.
Alderman Sorrentino.
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky.
Yes.
And Alderman Woods.
Okay. Motion carries, and thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Nice job, Brad.
Kudos to you and your staff for keeping us in a surplus budget year after year. Thank you.
Appreciate it, and appreciate all your support throughout the year and making this an easy process.
Thank you. Okay, items to consider at a future meetings. Water rates, April 28th. Write that down on your calendar. And
Got some extra officers here.
PC replacement in spring, coming up to spring, and IT control room discussion coming up summertime. Any other items to consider? If there are none, I'll make a motion to
Second.
adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Motion carries. Thank you.